Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Leadership Project with your host Mick Spears. We bring you thought-provoking guests and topics every week to challenge your thinking about leadership. Our aim is to help you become the leader that you wish you always had as we learn together and lead together. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Leadership Project. I'm greatly honoured today to be joined by Jeff Eschliman. Jeff is the CEO and founder of the Jeff Eschliman Consulting Group. He's got a stellar career, a veteran of the military through to corporate life, and now he dedicates his life to helping people find life harmony. And that's what we're going to focus on in today's discussion. And there's a lot of nuance here that we'll uncover. Everyone's heard of work-life balance. Jeff is going to challenge our thinking about that to bring in this concept of harmony and to bring more richness to that discussion. So Jeff, without any further ado, please do say hello to the audience. And I'd love to unpack a little bit of your background and what led you today to be passionate, almost obsessed about this term life harmony.
Yeah, that's a great term. And I really appreciate you having me on, Mick. My background, I would call myself a warrior. So it started for me really easy, really early. Age 20, actually, drove an armored personnel carrier into Iraq. I was 20 years old when I was coming back from that experience. And I knew that I'd been asked to, and I would have seen the worst things that I'd ever see in my life. And today at age 53, that's still true. I'm a 30-year corporate warrior. I've led people and teams. I've led my organization through the good times and the bad, both growth and recession. I'm a leader who believes in people. I play the long game. I think people is all about personal development and people development. My holy grail, I would say, is operational excellence. That's really what I've strived for in my business career. But today I use my experience to help other people. Unfortunately, most of the experience that I've gotten through life has been a lot of times just doing the wrong thing. So unfortunately, I've been more than 100 pounds overweight. I've been bankrupt. I've been divorced. I'm not proud of any of these things, but I have been able to learn the lessons. I have been able to pull myself up by my own bootstraps and, learn some better ways to do things and take different action. And so I basically feel like I was put on this planet to help other people by telling my story and using some of the tools and the systems that I've been able to create in my life to help others. And that's the next part of the journey for me. And I'm so stoked about it.
Well, thank you for your openness and your transparency. I'll even say humility to say that, life doesn't always go as you plan, and the ability to be able to share your lessons learnt with others. Everyone else will have their journey, but I'm sure that by sharing your journey with others, that people can either see themselves in that story and be able to reflect on it, or you might be able to head off someone going down the rabbit hole of making similar mistakes to yourself. You talk about wanting to help other people. What makes that important to you?
Well, I'll tell you, it was really early in my career. I was in the home building industry. And for a lot of years, I came up on job sites and I was the person responsible for building homes. So for the first really 10 years of my career, I was responsible for delivering the American dream, right? Putting a set of keys in somebody's hands and seeing a little kid say, oh, that's going to be my bedroom. And, and I got this wonderful sense of satisfaction out of delivering something that tangible. And then I started moving into the office and going through progressive levels of leadership and management, I felt a loss really because I didn't have that same sense of accomplishment. But what I ended up finding, Mick, was not only something that replaced that, but it far exceeded it. And it was people, and it was helping people. It was, first of all, helping myself grow. And I think that's where it was my own journey of discovery. And then I had the nature to want to help other people. And I found people that were willing learning, and I just continue to help grow and invest, and seeing people develop from, and it didn't have to be even in leadership positions, just seeing somebody develop in their role was really phenomenal to me. But I had done it long enough, and I'm a little bit of a unicorn where I did it all in one organization, which in today's day and age is absolutely unheard of. So a 30-year career with one organization. Now, it got bought a couple of times, but I really went to work for the same organization and retired from there. And so I got a chance. I had a chance to work with people for 5-10. There's people at the company that have been there longer than me. So I can say that I've worked with somebody for 30 years and invested into their career and their life. And this, next to being a parent, the most rewarding thing that I've ever done in my life.
I do know some people that have worked for the same company for 30, 40, 50 years, but it's usually the exception these days. So that there must be something special happening in that organization. What I'm hearing there, Jeff, I'd love to reflect back to you and get your thoughts on this. I'm hearing pursuit of purpose. So in those early days when you were on the shop floor, for want of a better word, and you were seeing the impact of the work that you're doing, the picture that you showed there of handing the keys over to a family that then big beaming smiles on their face, the American dream, if you like, the impact that you're having on those families, you could see it directly. But then as you moved away from that and you get into corporate world and you start looking, I don't think I'll be exaggerating here, you end up, poring over spreadsheets and forecasts and numbers, etc. You get that bit removed away from why are we really doing this in the first place? And what I'm hearing there, Jeff, is you refound purpose in the people around you. And by helping those people, you could get joy and fulfillment again, instead of just that vacant feeling that you get from just the pursuit of revenue, profit, etc. How does that sit with you?
I'd say that it's actually both. I mean, I did get joy out, not the spreadsheets per se, but as I alluded to in my opening, like I'm all about operational execution, all about operational excellence. And it's people that make that happen. I mean, it is process and it is systems, but at the end of the day, it's people that make that happen. So rallying around the cause, rallying around results, rallying around a vision or a mission for a business, and then having the ability to have a team coalesce around what that is, and then deal with the challenges that come at you on a day-to-day basis and find a way to overcome by, personal growth, rallying together as a team to overcome obstacles and things of that nature. That was a rewarding element to me. And I think the underlying theme here, though, is people, right? It was people on the job site. It was people at the office. It's people working together in a team format.
So let me extrapolate from that then. So what I'm hearing, so with your pursuit of operational excellence, the realization that results come through people, right? And there's a lot of different leadership styles out there. And there are some companies that are successful for a period of time, by the way, with this, that sometimes the results come at the expense of people. And then there's other companies and leaders that realize that results come through people and through supporting people, encouraging them, empowering them, enabling them, all of these things. So it sounds like you fit into the latter of that, and you realized it relatively early in your career and doubled down on it. How does that sit?
Absolutely. No, that's exactly it. And, and I've worked for, it was a private company when I first started. And then our organization was purchased by a big Fortune 500 company. And at that time, I thought like, wow, I work for this great little private company and we're doing so well here. And then we get bought by this big Fortune 500, which I thought was going to ruin, everything. And it was exactly the opposite. I tell people of that era of my life, it was like the scales were peeled back from my eyes. And I realized like there was a whole other level beyond this private company that I work for. And then we got sold from that organization to another public company. And it was a little bit more of the, kind of rigorous, what you would call like corporate environment, still a very healthy team-led culture, people first kind of a culture. But there's even gradient differences, at least in my opinion, from private organizations, big Fortune 500 companies, or pure play publics.
I've been through a number of M&As myself, and it can go either way, right? So it looks like you've had a bit of a balance of both here, and maybe not to the whole extreme of where it can go. But when, this is a good one for anyone out there that's been through an M&A or is about to go through an M&A, sometimes the acquiring organisation actually ruins the very golden nugget of what made that organisation special. And it looks like that didn't happen in your case. And when it happens positively, if they can hold on to the jewel of what's making the place special, all of a sudden you've got this expanded reach, you've got increased access to capital, and you can actually start multiplying the impact of what that small business was limited in its ability to get out there and change the world. All of a sudden they've got access to greater resources, greater capital, as long as that acquiring body doesn't ruin the very thing that made the place special in the first place. How does that sit with you, Jeff?
Yeah, you're spot on. And I will tell you that even in this last acquisition, it was a lot about the people. I was working in real estate, so it was also a lot about the land positions and the holdings of the other organization. But the people were the secret sauce. I mean, they were buying this experienced leadership team and this vast, institutional knowledge that was locked up in these various regions across the country here in the United States. And it really was a power play on people.
All right, so people are at the heart of all of this. What I'd love to know is, where does this obsession with life harmony come? Was there a moment in time that something clicked for you? Was it something that snuck up on you? What inspired you to now focus so much on what you call life harmony?
It was more of a gradual, and the majority of the things that I've been able to implement in my personal life, Mick, are all really adaptations of things that I've taken from business, right? And so it wasn't really, I'll tell you, the defining moment for me was I was this very busy executive in a company, and I was not only in this high leverage operational role that took so much of my time, but simultaneously, it was my personal health. And it was being a father. And then ultimately I became a grandfather, and I'm a spouse, and I'm still a son, fortunately. And I have siblings, and I have friends. And this is no different than, any of our listeners today, probably fulfill all of these type of roles. But what I found was that I was in this kind of hedonic, race. And it was predominantly led by my role in my corporate job, because it was highly demanding of me, of my time, and specifically my energy, right? You got to bring a lot of high energy if you've got a lot of people that are reporting to you. And, I'm a leader that believes you need to look the part, right? You need to demonstrate what you want. So not that it's the never let them see you sweat kind of mentality. And sometimes people need to see you, be a little bit human, right? So they understand that that's how that it works, and that that's okay, right? But having all of these roles, I just felt like this. I oftentimes, Mick, use the analogy of like the plate spinning, right? Like that you're over here spinning these plates, and, you got 6 or 8 of them, if we're going to call these roles, this plate spinning, and I'm spinning my father plate, and I'm spinning my operations plate, and all these other plates, and you know how it works. And then one will start to wobble, and you got to get over there and spin it up a little bit faster. But it was really my realization that I needed something different. And so what I did was I created this process for myself. In our corporation, our leadership team was taken once a quarter, and we were doing these leadership retreats where we would take, at least a day in the quarter away from the office, and we would go retreat away someplace, not the office. We'd meet as a group. We'd go through our last quarter results. We'd build a plan for the next quarter. But what was remarkable to me was the fact that we were taking time away from the business. We intentionally set this time aside, right? And then I got to thinking about it later, and I'm like, why am I not doing this in my personal life? Because I would come back from these leadership retreats and I would feel like refreshed. It's like just to get a little break from the emails and the voicemails and the little birds with their mouth open, which are our teams, right? They all want a little piece of your time or a little bit of advice, that kind of thing. And it's always, like this incessant, kind of needing. And this process that we were going through our regular meeting rhythms and cadence of checking out was an epiphany for me. So I started doing it in my personal life. And I now refer to this is one of the 3 things in my system is the day of Zen.
So there's three things I take away from that, Jeff, and I probably want to unpack the second and the third one, starting with the second one. Bear with me for a second while I reflect on what I just heard from you. So the first one was about the role modeling of behaviours. Yes, role modeling of behaviours, including an authentic behaviour of showing up as your authentic self and being able to show your true self in the office. So that's wonderful. That sits very well with some of our philosophies here at the Leadership Project. The second one is really interesting, is the word identity really rang true in my brain when I was listening to you. And it's whether we pigeonhole our identity around one dominant identity, or we realize that we have multiple identities every day that can be congruent, right? So am I Jeff Eschliman, vice president and executive, and that's all I am? Or am I father, am I son, am I husband, am I brother, all of those things? And the answer is you're all of them. But if we allow one of those identities to dominate, the others suffer, is what I'm hearing there. And to use your plate spinning methodology, we end up with plates on the ground that have been shattered. And then the third one I was picking up there is, and I'm going to add something here, is you were looking at this going, what am I learning in the corporate life that why aren't I applying that in my home life? I have a feeling that if you look closely, maybe sometimes it could go the other way. What's working in my home life that I could bring to the corporate life? That was an interesting observation. So I'd like to go into the second one around this thing around identity, because a lot of people, if you run into someone at a barbecue or a dinner party, etc., and you say, oh, so what do you do, Jeff? The answer will often be, I'm a vice president of a real estate company, or land development, or I don't know your industry near as well as you, Jeff, but it'll often be the professional answer as opposed to the harmonious, balanced answer. Tell me more about this identity element.
Yeah. So what I'm naming roles similar to these different identities that we have, again, whether that be father. And the one that maybe I didn't mention it was, it's the self. It's your personal, your own, as I alluded to in my introduction, being 100 pounds overweight, I figured out what it was like to crash the system, right? Your literal, internal system, and then figured that out. And then what I would say about that is, and not just your physical condition, but your mental condition. Right? If you're going to bring a high level of execution to yourself personally, if you're going to bring a high level of execution to a team, you need to bring a high level of execution to yourself personally. So having yourself in a mental state of mind as well as a physical state of mind, to me is imperative, right? And so that's why I love to use these roles in my harmony system. And then as a part of this Zen check-in system, I call the process checking out, which means checking out on life. So you can check in, which means checking in on you, right? And I do this on a monthly basis. And the reason that I do that is these roles can seemingly get out of harmony, right? And the reason that I do the frequency and the check-ins on at least a monthly basis is a month is a good chunk of time, right? But it's not a quarter and it's not a year to say, at the end of March, seemingly, oh my gosh, I said that I was going to do this many workouts this last month and I only did half of those. Well, okay. Well, you might be able to look back across the month and you might be able to get away with that if you do something different the next month. But if you do that a quarter in a row, right, you're going to be losing momentum and it's going to be harder to get back on. And right now I'm talking about the physical role, right? And I'm talking about that one because it's so pivotal to the rest of them. Physical health, mental health, and then these other roles, spiritual, relationships, personally, relationships, dynamically that happen within the organization. They're all critical. But if one of them, right, I prefer to think of that wheel of life. If you've done that wheel of life measurement where you measure from the hub out, right? And if that wheel is big and fat and round, to me, that's the goal, is when all of those things are in harmony.
I want to come to the harmony and the Zen check-in process shortly. I want to share something I'm taking away from that. What I was instantly thinking of when you were saying this, Jeff, was we do become a result of the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves, right? So I'm picturing now a person that's 100 pounds overweight, and if we accept that and say, oh, well, I'm 100 pounds overweight, it just becomes a self-propelling or a self-fulfilling prophecy. If I say, oh, I'm not a very good father, I become not a very good father. If I pigeonhole myself as a leader, as a vice president of a real estate company, the stories I tell myself about myself become reality. And then as we shift that, if we change the narrative, if we change the way, well, no, I am a good father. Or actually, I look after myself and I go to the gym and I eat healthier foods. I think about my mental health as well as my physical health. I'm a caring leader. We start telling ourselves the positive story of the person that we want to become. We start moving in that direction. And then the key point was then the consistency. It's not just I went to the gym once. It's not just I asked my team members once if they were having a nice day and I took interest in them one day. It's not just I'm a good father because I went to one soccer match once. It's consistency. How do those two things sit with you? The story narrative that you tell yourself and the consistency to show up as that person?
Yeah, I think you're right on both accounts. And to the former, from the stories that we tell ourselves, I believe that it can work both ways. I believe there's a middle ground, right? And we're talking about momentum here, right? So if you tell yourself that narrative where I am the better father, even if in the back of your mind, you know, you're not being the father that you want to be, there's a middle ground where you could say, well, guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to try to be a better father starting this next month. And this is what it's going to look like. Instead of going to no soccer match in the previous month, even though there's 4 of them, I'm going to go to at least 2. And therefore, you know, am I a better father? Yes, I'm a better than I was before. And then it is perpetual. If you want to make it 3 the next month, or if you want to prove to yourself that you can do 2 times 2 months in a row, it's all iterative and we get to decide. And then from the consistency standpoint, like that is spot on, Mick. Like with the people that I work with to start with myself personally, and then the people that I've been working with through my career and now my clients, it is the single biggest thing that can be the hang up or the momentum going forward is the consistency. And I'm a start small guy and start with the fundamentals and build. We can go into that if you'd like.
Yeah, let's unpack that further. So let's give some practical advice to the audience out there and get them maybe to think about themselves and where they want to be. How does someone take those first steps and how do they build the momentum, the flywheel, whatever you want to call it? So any advice you've got there about exactly what you just said, start small, get the fundamentals right, and then build.
Right. And the fundamentals that I'm going to mention here don't necessarily have anything to do with business or leadership. They're just life skills, right? So how well are you sleeping? What are you doing for nutrition? What is your movement? Do you have a regular written daily practice of gratitude? One of the single biggest things that I've ever found in my entire life that moves the needle on a positive trajectory is having a regular written practice of gratitude daily. Are you doing something to be mindful? Is it prayer? Is it meditation? Again, different strokes for different folks. But if you have those core fundamentals, it's hard to have a bad day. It's not impossible, but then it's really hard to have 2 in a row. If you're sleeping well, eating, moving, you're moving your body, you're grateful for what you have, and you have a practice of some brand of wellness or mindfulness, it's hard to have 2 bad days in a row. Again, not impossible, but that's what Jeff thinks about the core fundamentals.
I love it, Jeff. So sleep, nutrition, movement, mindfulness. And then I love the bit about gratitude because that then also connects to how you're going to then connect to other human beings, right? So we live in societies. We need to connect to other human beings, and gratitude and things like Martin Seligman's work around the gratitude surveys and things that he does. It's well proven in terms of improving your own joy, fulfillment, and mental health. So I like this. What I love about this is when you said fundamentals, they were truly fundamentals. They weren't kind of, I'm going to try this or I'm going to try that. They were truly fundamental things that you can do every day.
And if you want to run out every day and be a better leader, or if you want to go out the next day and be a better father, what better way to do that than take care of yourself first?
Yeah, nice. So what is the next step, right? So let's say the audience out there have taken your advice here, Jeff, and they've put some fundamentals in place. How do they take the next step up?
The next step up, I'll use the other element of my system, which is the one-page plan for life. So another adaptation that I've taken from business. So I was really fortunate the last probably 15 years of my career to work in a system where we worked off of a one-page strategic plan for our business. And again, I took just a direct lift off of this model. And I said to myself, like, and this is how it worked, Mick, I'd find myself like at the office at, 6:30 in the evening in March, right? It's the end of the quarter. And I'm there, burning the proverbial midnight oil, trying to get some initiative or some goal across the finish line, because I was going to that leadership retreat and I needed to report out on our metrics, our results. And I went back and I asked myself, I'm like, why am I not doing this in my personal life? Like, why am I not pouring it on down at the gym? If I just did my day of Zen and I found that I was up 5 pounds, which, doesn't have to be the end of the world, but is it because, I'm not going to be reporting out to a leadership team or a board of directors on, my own personal KPIs, like, hey, honey, let me show you how much I weigh, right? And maybe if I was, that it would mean something different to me. So I took all the elements from the one-page plan that we were using in business, and it really helped me define, like, even though I had a pretty good notion of like what the purpose of my life was, just intuitively, when I put it on paper, it crystallized for me, Mick. I'm like, this is why I feel like God put me on this planet to do what I'm doing right now, which is take all these experiences and help people find a better way, right? And so the one-page plan has your core values, for an organization. I put my core values on a piece of paper and it guides what I do every day, my decision making. And I've had some big decisions as I've wrapped up my corporate life and I've moved into coaching. I've been faced, the old analogy, when some doors close, other doors open. And I've had those kind of doors open and opportunities that were outside of what you hear me talking about right now. But it was my guiding purpose and my mission that said, well, that's a wonderful opportunity, but that doesn't work for where I'm heading in my life. So core values leads to core competencies. So what are you good at? And like, what do you want to do? Right. And then so if you can start marrying up your core values and your core competencies and you coalesce that around your purpose. And then the last part of the strategic plan is all about goals and metrics. And again, it runs just like a business, right? So my body fat percentage is on my one-page plan for my life, right? How much money do I want to put in a 401k? How much income? Those type of metrics. And then, of course, goals.
So the 3 words that popped into my head as you were talking, Jeff, were clarity. Taking this time to write it down will drive a level of clarity in your own mind about what's important to you. So whether it's the values and beliefs or the goals, it helps you to crystallize with deeper clarity about what's important to you. The second one was accountability. And I think that starts with yourself by writing it down and looking at it once a week, once a day, whatever your ritual is. You're going to drive a level of accountability. And the third one that popped into my head was the word partner. And if to use a boardroom analogy, your family is your board. And if you share this one-page plan with your significant other, you'll now have an accountability partner, someone that can help you with self-awareness, can help you point out, hey, are you on track with the goal? Or is that behavior really in line with your values and beliefs? And empower your partner to be an accountability partner and to hold you to what you committed to. How do those three themes sit with you, Jeff?
I would say you're, again, spot on. The clarity is what the purpose is all about. And again, me using that analogy of other doors opening, sometimes it not only tells you what to do, it tells you what not to do. Right. And then the other thing, and I don't know if you meant it this way, or I don't remember if you mentioned this in the beginning, but when I have a purpose like this, and it also is reminiscent of business, and one of the things I believe about leadership and creating a vision for people is the term that I would use, and this is a little overused these days, but living into, right? I want to live into, you were using the word identity before, I was using roles. I want to be able to live into, I didn't mention it, but on the core competencies, you usually like to try and do it about 80-20. Like 80% of it is something that you could officially take credit for today. Like this lives within your character. But about 15-ish, 20% of it can be a little bit aspirational, right? And I'm a big fan of writing down things for myself and my own goals about, Like, I don't just want to be a good coach. I really want to be an elite coach. Even though I'm 53 years old, I don't want to be just an athlete at 53. I want to be elite athlete at 53 years old. I get to define what that means, but that is those are examples of like identities that I'm trying to live into.
I like this 80-20, and what it builds for me is a level of consistency, writing down the person that I am and being consistent to that person. And then the 20% is the growth. So consistency and growth. What am I going to do to learn and grow every day so that 54-year-old Jeff Eschliman is proud of what he's done in the year between 53 and 54 and it's next level?
And then I don't know if you found this to be true, Mick, but I'm just a big believer in that 20% and the stretch and the grow, right? Because I look back across my entire life in these really difficult situations that I mentioned and other ones that I didn't, like being a high school football player and doing like 2-a-day practices here in Arizona, right? Like not an easy thing, or even just going through military basic training is quite a little test, right? But I look back on those scenarios and say, I wouldn't be the man I am today if I had not have went through those experiences. So as I sit here today at the 53-year-old Jeff, I'm trying to think, well, what is the next thing? That's where I come up with the like elite athlete type of identity for myself now, because the striving, the stretching, the growing, that's where the magic is. And when I mean magic, I mean nothing but just hard work, right? Like that's where the beauty is for me.
The things I'm hearing there is, so we already spoke about the importance of consistency and getting the fundamentals right. But then in doing so, then what we need is to stretch out of our comfort zone. And great things happen just the other side of our comfort zone. That's where the growth is.
Exactly. And so you're building that foundation with those fundamentals, right? The house that's built on a great foundation will be the one that does not crumble, right? So if you've built that foundation, then you, again, a term I'm not real fond of because it gets used a lot, but level up, right?
All right. So I want to come back to this Zen checkout, check-in process. Tell me more about that. That sounded really interesting.
Yeah. So the way I do it, and I suggest this, and a lot of my clients do it as well, although I don't tell anybody, follow what Jeff does chapter and verse. Let's talk about your life. Let's figure out how things are going. I'm going to tell you the processes that I use. And I'm a pretty intense guy. So I probably use them at the, maybe on the scale of 1 to 10, I'm an 11, and that's okay. Right. But the day of Zen for me, again, I mentioned was check out so you can check in. Right. And I developed the process. I was really fortunate that I worked for this big company and I got a ton of vacation. So I was literally taking a day off of work, putting in PTO, because I tried to do it like on a Saturday, or I tried to do it, with just taking, they would allow me to just take the time on the clock and do it. But then I almost felt beholden to check emails or answer a call from my team. And I'll tell you, Mick, I started doing this in about 2013. And over the years, it developed to, again, I use that term when we first started, like I was almost famous or infamous for my day of Zen, because that meant nobody was going to get a hold of me, not my kids and not my wife and not the email. Like, to say that I was off the grid would be an understatement, right? And so the first thing you have to do is get out of your day-to-day routine. You don't do this at your office. You don't do this at your home. I like to go to places that are inspirational. And for me, that's a lot of outside, right? Like I would go out in the desert if the weather was nice for it. I would go to some, location, Sedona or Tucson, something that has natural beauty, because I like to be in a place that makes me think bigger, right? Because we can all get, kind of tied up in our own little personal world and our personal problems. And that's natural, right? But to me, if I go connect with nature and I go look at the vast expanse of what, this planet is made of, it just makes me think differently. It makes me think bigger. It makes me think cleaner, right? And so the entire first part of the process, Mick, is reviewing the previous month. So I've got an entire checklist that I go through. I'm talking about all the key metrics. How much is in the 401k? How much is in the bank account? What's my body fat percentage? I said I was only going to, drink, 2 cans of beer at a time. Did that happen or not? Right. And then I go through all of my goals. And then it's just this wholesale check-in on the previous month. All of those roles, all of the goals that I had. I said that I was going to do this. Did I do it? Right. right? And then I answer all those questions. Inevitably, there's a lot of things that are checked off. There's a handful of things that are not. And then when they're not, you need to ask yourself a different set of questions, right? Like, okay, this didn't happen. The next best question is, if that didn't happen, why? Is it because you didn't put in maximum effort? Or maybe you did put in maximum effort and you just didn't achieve it? Then it's what I would call a gestation issue. Like, how long is it going to take? Maybe I just picked the wrong time frame. So if I go back after it again the next month with a new time frame, the probability of me getting there is high, right? And then really the second half of the day is all about planning that next month. So it's taking a wholesale evaluation of what went well, what didn't, how was I showing up in those roles? And then it's taken into account like what's happening in the world and what's coming at you. Because just as soon as you build a great plan, right, life starts dealing you change, right? It could be very small changes, or it could be, on the global pandemic level, right? So change.
Really powerful process, Jeff. And some key things I took away from it was changing the environment so that you're not just in that same environment where there's a chance that you just get sucked into daily existence. Then the accountability of thinking about, well, what did I do in the last month that was consistent and congruent with the person I'm trying to be, and where did it not go to plan? I love the thought, think big, to be able to then give you that space to go, okay, what's next as well? And what I'm essentially hearing is mini course corrections, right? So life does throw you curveballs every month, going, okay, what do I need to do differently next month? So, and it might not be a huge shift. It might be a subtle shift to little adjustments that you make. And the theme that came to my mind when you were saying this was the difference between just existing and living. So are you just existing? Have a think about this in the audience. Have a think about your daily life, your weekly life, your monthly life. Do you just go about your life and then at the end of the month go, oh, where did the month go? Or are you checking in with yourself, like Jeff is saying, and going, hey, what did go well this month? What didn't go well? What will I do differently next month? What do I need to do more of, less of, ramp up, all of these things? The difference between just existing and life passing you by and living the life that you want to live. How does that sit with you, Jeff?
That's beautiful. Like you capture the essence of what the day is in is. And just one other point that I'd like to add, Mick, that's so powerful for this process. And it goes on now all the way back to the consistency that you mentioned. So what this process gives me is a touchstone, right? So in two different ways, like one, in a 4-week span of time, in this next month, right? Something's probably going to come into each of our lives, which is something new. And you know how things go, right? Like I don't have a perfect analogy for this, but let's say it's a visit from the in-laws, right? There's a real fun one. Okay, so the spouse comes to you and says, hey, guess what? We're going to be getting a visit from the in-laws. And if you don't have a process like this, you know how your mind works, right? You'll have that thought about the process of your in-laws visiting. Hopefully in your life, that's mostly good, but we know how life works and, maybe it's not. So that kind of gnaws at your subconscious, right? Because you're thinking like, well, how's that going to play out? Or, how's it going to be when they're there? And I use the Zen process to do this reactively. Like if I know the in-laws are coming, I can put maybe, if it's even just 20 minutes of time on my day of Zen to think about the in-laws coming. And then as you said before, like if I want to script this where it's going to be the best it possibly could be when the in-laws come, if you have a plan for that, the chances of that happening are much more likely than if you don't do anything. And then the other thing, and this is super powerful, like if I have ideas that come up in any given month, and it doesn't need to be something that's solved, put this in the important bucket, but not urgent, right? So if I have things like that come up and I want to spend more like thoughtful time thinking about them or figuring out how I can work that into my life, then I'll work time into my day of Zen where I already know that I have. I'll tell you this, Mick, like I'm putting together a list like at least 2 weeks before my day of Zen of things that I just want to think about that, when I'm running day to day and when I'm spinning the plates and I'm doing all these other roles, I run pretty hard, all day long. And to intentionally carve out some time to think about things that are important in my life, it's really cool to have a process and a dedicated time where I know I can do either proactively or reactively.
I want to add there, Jeff, something that came to mind as you're talking. I feel like that process would work for both challenges and opportunities. So if you're getting ready for something that you know is going to be a challenge this coming month, how do I best prepare for it and work with that situation, overcome obstacles, overcome anything that might be a difficult day that I think is coming up, et cetera, et cetera. But equally, if I know that there's an opportunity coming up this month, how do I maximize my leverage of that opportunity to make the most of it? So in my case, I might be a bit unique here. I love my in-laws. So if I knew my in-laws were coming next month, if I took the time to plan it out a little bit, I would leverage that opportunity to show them something special in the city, take them for a nice meal, etc. Whereas if I just go, oh, okay, they're coming next month and I do no thought process, we will just exist. I'm sure we'll have a good time, but we'll just exist and I will miss the opportunity to maximize their visit, right? So I feel like it's both challenges and opportunities. How do I minimize obstacles and navigate around them, and opportunities? How do I maximize the leverage I can get from that opportunity? How does that sit with you, Jeff?
That's beautiful. And it is both. And I didn't articulate like when I was talking about thinking about the big thing and proactively, but that is most of the time how I use that, is to think about things that are going to occur in the future. Or I even use it for what I refer to as speculation, right? So again, I like to think big. I like to create goals out to about 5 years. And then I've only got 3 goals right now that go beyond 5 years, but I think it's important to think bigger and long term. And when you're taking some intentional time to speculate and think about a great question is, how good can life be? Another great question, which is kind of scary, is like, how good can you stand it? It was actually my very first coach, Steve Chandler, that said, how good can you stand it? Which is fun and scary thing to think. Like, how good can you stand for life to be? Is there such a thing as too good?
Yeah, I think it can be. You can become complacent. You can become privileged.
Well, then I would argue that it's no longer good. Again, I believe good is in the pursuit, right? It's not the ribbon at the end, right? It's the journey.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Very good. I like it, Jeff. So what we've covered so far, we've been thinking about our identity, about our roles, that we're not just one, that harmony comes from thinking about all the roles that we play and having those in some level of balance or harmonious existence. We've thought about, putting a one-page plan together of our life and learning lessons from corporate world and going, hey, why don't we do that in our life? And then we've got these check-out, check-in process of really making sure that we are living, not just existing, and we're pushing ourselves. We're getting our fundamentals right of our 80%, and then we're pushing ourselves out of our comfort zone to make things happen. Really loving this, Jeff. What I want to ask you now is, on the leadership project, we talk about leadership across 3 dimensions. We talk about leading self, leading others, and leading the business. And we've spoken a lot about leading self right now. What I'd like to now do is lift it up just one level, and let's say that you're a leader of a team, 7 people, 10 people, whatever the case may be. How do you bring some of these concepts of harmony to help your team also achieve similar things?
Well, the handful that I think about when I think about this is always learning, right? So we've talked about leading self and always learning as an individual, always learning as a team, learning together, being somebody that demands that your team is learning. I think that's very important. Being humble yourself as a leader is one of the best ways to get engagement from your team when, again, we alluded to this before, letting them see you be human in the moment, right? So that's a very important part. Being caring, being a caring leader, right? So thinking about people, the whole self, like what's happening to them in their personal life, right? Like we'd love to think that everybody brings their A game every day, but like we don't bring our A game every day, right? So that's a thing, right? And then how do you manage that? How do you, contend with that part of the caring? And then the other thing I think it's really important as you're coaching for leadership is being open to change, right? Being not just dealing with change, but receptive to change, because change is inevitable, right? And in our lives, in our worlds, just our own human body and the evolution that that's going through is a continual change. And I think those are probably the biggest elements of, creating and fostering, making a space for people to grow, I think is a big thing for me, and giving people, the room to be, because I'm sure all of our listeners, well, maybe not all, but, the audience here is on a journey of, growth themselves, and they know the pitfalls of leadership that they've been in and the mistakes they've made, and giving people a little runway to do that on their own is also very important. I guess space is a good word for that, which is, it's nurturing space, right? It's not the edge of a cliff.
So I'm hearing three things there, Jeff. I'm hearing around the role modeling of behaviors, including humility. I'm hearing creating a caring environment where people do feel and know that they're cared about. And then I'm hearing this holding space, allowing people to grow, which will also enable you as a team to be ready for change, and changes and is inevitable. Really powerful stuff, Jeff. There's been a lot of great takeaways from today's discussion. I'd like to give you the floor to give one last passing bit of advice around life harmony for all those in the audience, and then we're going to go to our rapid round.
I would say that, it's all about the reflection and the insight. So harmony for me begins with the reflection of where are we right now in the moment? And then it's the perspective of understanding how that is in the moment. I'm a big fan of looking in the past, only about 3%, right? Just enough to learn what has happened and then apply that to the future. I'm a big fan of looking forward to the future, about 5%. If you do more than 5%, I believe you're daydreaming, right? But you got to go out there and have a vision. You got to make goals. You got to have a plan. But the vast majority of the time should be spent in the present. We didn't get a chance to talk about my carpe diem. That's the last part. Carpe diem, seize, Latin for seize the day, right? And so how do we bring all of those things that are on the one-page plan, those reflections of things that we've learned from the day of Zen, and then how do we apply that, right? Because knowledge is not power. Knowledge is potential, right? And so how do you turn that potential into results? It's through action, right? And what you do today, right? Seize the day. Have a great day. The best way to have a great week is to have a good today, right? The best way to have a great month is to string those weeks together. So that's what I would say.
That's really nice. That's a great way to close us out, actually. Let's think about the focus on action, right? What can I actually do today? And you use the word knowledge. I'll include the word learning here. And there's a lot of people out there that say that learning is the key, right? It doesn't matter if you fail. It only matters if you learn. I add to that, it only matters if you apply that learning. Otherwise, the lesson is in your brain, but it didn't change the world, did it? So
that is generally what I tell my clients is it's not about the knowing. I mean, most of us know, is it chocolate cake or is it not? It's about the doing.
Very good. All right. Wonderful lessons today, Jeff. I've really enjoyed today's discussion. Personally, I'm sitting here reflecting, going, well, yeah, maybe I could do a little more of these things as well, by the way. And so I've learned a lot, and I know the audience would as well. I'd like to take us to our rapid round now. So the first question is, what is the one thing you know now that you wish you knew when you were 20?
It's the one thing that I wish I would have known up to age 37, because 38 is the year that I had the epiphany. So, first of all, in the answer, it would be, it's never too late to change, right? But the real learning is, for me, anything is possible through your own personal development. And that's what I learned when I hit the wall at age 37. That's what I started figuring out between age 38 and now, is that through my own personal development, anything was possible.
Yeah, I love it, Jeff. Really powerful. What's your favorite book?
My favorite book of all time, and I can't believe you're making me pin this down to one. I have so many. It's probably the shortest, but it's had the biggest impact on my life because I needed this at age 38. And it was Earl Nightingale, The Strangest Secret, which I think is the most densely packed 32 minutes of personal development that's available. And I'm a student of personal development.
I do not know that one. So that's a new one for me. I'll have to look into that one for sure. What's your favorite quote?
My favorite quote is from my all-time, the biggest influence on my life outside of my father is Jim Rohn. And this Jim Rohn quote is, "Don't wish it was easy, wish you were better."
Oh, yeah. Wow. That is super powerful. I love that one. All right, brilliant. And finally, Jeff, there's going to be a lot of people that are deeply interested in life harmony and thinking about applying your framework and applying the models that we've been talking about. How do people find you if they'd like to know more?
Yeah, Mick, if any of this resonates, my website is the best. So it's jeffeschliman.com, which is JEFFESCHLIMAN.com. And on my website, you can do a couple of things. You can take an assessment to find out how much harmony you have in your life. You can watch a short little video series that I put together that outlines in a little bit more detail what we've been talking about today about that 3-part process. And of course, you can just find a way to connect with me directly if you want to jump on the phone and have a chat. So again, that's jeffeschliman.com, JEFFESCHLIMAN.com. Last, I know as well as anybody that, leading in this day and age is difficult. Like I'm just stepping out of the literal fire myself. And these are about as turbulent times as I've ever seen. And I hope some of the stuff that I've shared today, can be helpful to the audience.
I have no doubt of that whatsoever, Jeff, and we will put those links in the show notes as well. It just makes it easier for people to find them. Thank you so much for your time today, for sharing your wisdom, your experience, and giving us an insight into your framework. I do encourage the audience, go to that website and dig a little bit deeper, do that self-assessment and have a think about whether your life is in harmony and whether you are just existing or whether you're living the life that you want to live. That's absolutely brilliant, Jeff. Thank you so much. Thank you for listening to The Leadership Project at mickspears.com. A huge call out to Faris Sadek for his video editing of all of our video content, and to all of the team at TLP. Joanne Goes On, Gerald Calabo, and my amazing wife, Say Spears. I could not do this show without you. Don't forget to subscribe to the Leadership Project YouTube channel, where we bring you interesting videos each and every week. And you can follow us on social, particularly on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. Now, in the meantime, please do take care, look out for each other, and join us on this journey as we learn together and lead together.